Hi there. In this lecture we see Vladimir Karasev against Rashid Nezhmetdinov, 1973, Latvian Open. We see knight f3 from Karasev, knight f6, c4, c5, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, e6, knight c3, bishop b4, knight d to b5, and black just castles, Nezhmetdinov just castles, bishop f4. We have d5, a3. If knight c7 here, you might ask, isn't this dangerous, winning the rook? We actually have a great resource, or set of resource ideas connected to each other actually in this position. Can you see for 10 points what the resources are for black? Yeah, knight e4 to start off with, knight takes a8, and the key point is, okay, it's not knight takes c3. There's a much stronger move than knight takes c3 here. We can use the unprotected piece ingredients and the king in the center ingredients. Those two ingredients, queen f6. This is very tricky for white. If queen c2, we take and we're on f2. e3, queen e5 back for pressurizing c3. And yeah, so this is very, very tricky. So knight a6 would stop the knight coming out even more from a8. And we're going to have a winning position here. For example, like this. In fact, we can move the knight now. The queen's also on c7. And we just get a winning position. Basically, this position, just taking out a8, we're in a winning position. So yes, it does seem as though this is very unpleasant. Bishop d2, queen takes f2 is checkmate. e3, bishop takes c3 is very unpleasant because a queen takes c3 check. And here, what would you play for 10 points? Yeah, queen b2 check. If king f3, queen takes f2 check. We've got a nice king hunt, e5 check. Knight f6 check, h6 is checkmate. So yes, bad idea to play knight c7 in a nutshell. So a3, we have bishop takes c3 check. And now knight takes c3 is maybe, it's an inaccuracy. B takes c3 was more accurate, but we'll go with that now. So this allows actually d4. We have knight b5, and this still seems, isn't this a concern? In fact, a6 is played here, which is very clever, gives the rook a7. And furthermore, now, it seems as though, well, maybe black's fallen victim to a short-term tactic idea, which is knight b5. This turns out to be a mistake. It's hitting the rook, and it's hitting b8. Knight d5 was the better idea, just to make use of bishop takes b8 here, and say rook a8, bishop e5, d takes c4, queen takes d4, and it should be even. So knight d5 seems stronger than what is played, as we'll find out soon. A takes b5, bishop takes b8. So guess what Nezhmetdinov plays in this position? So there's a key ingredient, the king's still in the center. Do we need to move the rook, or is there something else? For 200 points, what would you play? It's a positional kind of tactical exchange sacrifice. B takes c4 is played, offering the rook. If rook a8 had been played, bishop e5, hitting d4, and this is going to be only a small edge for black. So this position, for example, is only a small edge for black. But b takes c4, very different. So bishop takes a7. It's an exchange sack because we do get the bishop. Queen a5 check. Queen e2, queen takes a7. But you can see now, actually, the queen's quite well posted, actually. There's ideas of knight e4, d3, looking at f2. There's great ideas here. And you might have asked, hang on, what about like the move c3 in this position? Actually, white takes and blocks the pawn. And here, e3, queen a5, rook c1. That pawn's a bit fragile. Yeah, white's going to be winning there. So this is much better. We have e3 here. So if g3, just to show great piece coordination even with the queen on a7, knight e4, and let's say queen b4, d3, so we're threatening queen takes f2. Let's say e3, d2 check, and we get a nice position here, queen a6, which has similar themes to the game. c3 check, opening up this diagonal, on this diagonal, and here c takes b2 hits the rook, for queening, queen c6, and now we've got queen c1 in mind. It's wonderful, resources here. Knight f2 check. This is just wonderful stuff, wonderful news for black, this whole thing. So g3 is not particularly good. So e3 is played, d3, and now we have g3. If f3, knight d5, putting pressure on e3. If e4 here, knight e3, let's say rook c1, f5, black's getting more piece activity here with the king still in the center. If white has to sacrifice the bishop, this isn't particularly great for white. Here, knight takes g2 check, queen f2 check. You can see that black's doing really well. So that was on f3. On bishop takes d3, and that's rather desperate. Black is just doing very well here. So g3 is tried. We have knight e4, queen b4, and now d2 check. So king e2, and now queen a6. King f3. If bishop g2, c3 check is nice, because here, guess what we can play? Yeah, I mean, if the king goes to d1, there's knight takes f2 check there, at the very least. And, things get nasty after, for example, queen d3 check as well. So, the king goes to f3 in this variation. In this variation, let's have a look. If bishop g2 had been played, so we're saying c3 check, there's a move here. Can you see what it is? It's knight g5 check. So king f4, guess what we can play in this position? With the king, walking down the board, we can welcome that with e5 check. And yeah, there's an idea of queen g6 here. If king takes queen g6, or rather queen h6 is the more accurate one. Queen h6 is just a checkmate there. So if king takes e5, rook d8 here leaves black's king kind of helpless, cutting escape square d5. So now queen f6 is a mate threat. Queen e7, queen b5 check, bishop d5, queen takes d5 is going to be checkmating soon. Queen f5 is checkmate. So okay, so king f3 in the game is tried here rather than bishop g2. So now we have queen c6, king e2, queen d5. The queen has made progress, more central now. Queen has certainly made progress. Rook d1, and now e5 opening up the bishop. And just to show the threat here, it's bishop g4 and queen d3. If, just to show that, say a4, bishop g4 check takes out the king escape square f3, and then we just play queen d3 and that's checkmate. So white has to handle that, and handles it with h3 to try and take away g4. But now b6, opening up this possibility of bishop a6 under certain circumstances. So the queen and bishop are working on these diagonals. We have rook g1. Guess what Nezhmetdinov plays here? 10 points. Yeah, c3. It's pretty devastating, c3, opening up this diagonal, and also, big c2 threat. We have b takes, and now what ends the game in this position? Lovely game. Knight takes c3 check. This is a forced mate sequence. White actually resigned here at move 25. If queen takes c3, bishop a6 check. Queen d3, queen takes d3 check. King f3, bishop b7 check. King g4, queen g6 check. King h4, queen h6 check. King g4, and we can finish with f5 checkmate there. Yeah, wonderful game. So the game ended with knight takes c3 check. What a resourceful game. What a wonderful exchange sacrifice early in the opening. Basically, a very funny way of sacrificing the exchange in this game. A6 to give the rook A7, but the rook's going to be lost on A7 after this tactic. Funny stuff. B takes C4. What an amazing game indeed. Wonderful stuff. Exploiting the king in the centre. Okay. Hope you enjoyed this as much as me. Thanks so much. All comments, questions, likes and subscribes really appreciated. Thanks so much.